After the fire at Montreux, the band went back to the hotel, and most of the members voted to finish the tour. There were 10 more dates, and each was sold out. Even though they agreed to do this, there was a problem. The band's instruments were all lost in the fire. Zappa said, "We had been using a few special instruments, including a customized Fender Rhodes piano and other specialized synthesizer gear we couldn't buy off a shelf in Switzerland. My guitar was gone. All the stage lights were gone. The PA was gone." The group ended up canceling a week's worth of shows to find new equipment. They had planned to get to England 2 days in advance for their big show at the Rainbow and rehearse with new gear. They were double booked, and Frank wanted to ensure that everyone would feel used to their new equipment. On December 10th of 1971, they played the first show at the Rainbow in London. Though there were some problems like mic feedback, they made it through all right. At one point, when Frank was engaging the audience during some banter, he said, "Remember what happened the last time we played this?" And then he laughed as they went on to play King Kong. The band went off stage and came back to do an encore. Because of their location, they chose to play "I Want to Hold Your Hand" by the Beatles. Somehow, during this time, a man named Trevor Howell came on stage and punched Zappa in the back of the head and pushed him off stage. "The band thought I was dead," Frank said later in his autobiography. Zappa fell 15 feet from the stage to the orchestra pit. His head landed over his shoulder, neck bent like it had been broken. Because of the position that his head landed in, it crushed his larynx and permanently lowered his voice a third of an octave. Frank also had a broken rib, fractured leg, gash in his chin, a hole in the back of his head, and a paralyzed arm. Even worse, when Zappa was on the concrete floor, a monitor fell on top of him. Chaos ensued in the crowd, and rumors of Frank being dead flowed everywhere. For over an hour, no one knew what was happening. In his book, Frank stated that back then, he didn't carry a bodyguard with him. The only security was supplied by the local promoters. Frank said that the security was off smoking reefer someplace during the encore. Trevor Howell tried to escape, but the road crew were able to hold on to him, where he was taken backstage and held for the police. When asked why he did it, Howell gave 2 stories. The first story was that Howell's girlfriend stated that she loved Frank Zappa, and Howell thought that Zappa was looking at the girlfriend. Zappa stated in his book that when on stage, there are so many lights, it's impossible to see anyone in the audience. The second story Howell told was that he was pissed off, that he wasn't getting the value for his money. Either way, he ended up spending a year in jail. Not before getting out on bail while Frank was in the hospital. In the hospital, Frank couldn't get any anesthetic because of his head injury and passed out after a while. When he woke up, he was in a bad-smelling room with beds all around, in a circle with curtains hung between them. I remember seeing the curtains parting in front of me and a nurse coming in and seeing my face. I felt like she'd just seen a monster. I was pretty mashed up. Later, Frank was transferred to the Harley Street Clinic, where he stayed for a month. At this point, he did have a bodyguard, because no one knew whether Trevor Howell was crazy enough to come back or not. After a month, Frank learned to walk on crutches and had a cast on that went all the way up to his hip. He spent the better part of a year in a wheelchair and later had a prosthetic device for his leg. Once his leg finally healed, it turned a little crooked and was shorter than the other. A phrase later seen in some of his music, such as Dancin' Fool and Zombie Wolf. During his time in a wheelchair, Zappa refused to do any interviews and photo shoots and just focused on making music. He came out with many projects such as Just Another Band from LA, Waka Jawaka, and The Grand Wazoo, among others. Once he regained mobility, Frank had to reassemble a new band, as the other members of the previous version essentially had to get jobs because they just couldn't wait on him to heal. In the end, there's a lot of press surrounding the incident, at least in London. Not long before a planned show at the Oval Cricket Ground in London, Frank was in an interview when a girl entered the room. She handed him a bouquet and walked away. There was quiet questioning by other reporters, and then the girl stated that she was the girlfriend of Trevor Howell, the man who hurt Frank. She supposedly brought the flowers as a gift of remorse, but it turned out to be a fake publicity stunt. As for Howell, after spending a year in jail, it's unsure of what happened to him. There's a paragraph that floats around the internet about him, though I'm unsure how true it is. It states that Trevor Howell laid tarmac on roads around London for 30 years, from 1975 to 2005. On the night of the incident, Trevor had smoked cannabis and taken LSD. He was with his girlfriend, and he felt that Frank had made sexual gestures towards his girlfriend. Trevor was over 6'2" and 16 stone, and he managed to bypass the security and onto the stage. He attacked Frank and pushed him into the pit. The security held Trevor behind the stage, and he was kicked and beaten until the police arrived. He spent a year in prison. Trevor overcame his drug use and turned to Buddhism, spending the later years of his life in Thailand and Asia, practicing Buddhism and forms of meditation. Trevor had a good heart and was a kind and giving person. He always regretted his actions that night and would have changed the outcome in hindsight. He learned from the negativity he created and became a positive person because of it. So whether it's true or not, we'll never know. But if it is, hopefully he does regret his actions.